Hello, this is Scott Bogren, Editor-in-Chief of Community Transportation Magazine.
And I'm Rich Sampson, editor.
And we're here today to discuss with you the editorial content of our Georgia Transit Tour edition of DigitalCT. Every year, we like to kind of take the measure of transit in all its forms and facets across a single state. This year's state was the state of Georgia.
Yeah, we had a good time going through Georgia in the middle of summer, which is hot most years.
Yeah, it was a little warm, wasn't it, Rich? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's cover the issues. Let's cover the issue chronologically, and kind of as we took the tour. We started out in Atlanta, and our first visit was with the Atlanta Regional Council, and I wrote that piece. We found the ARC is a MPO and a regional commission covering the 10-county Atlanta region. It's doing a lot of really interesting and innovative work on two specific facets of the transit and the public and community transportation system in that 10-county region. And it really boiled down to kind of access and information. The ARC doesn't operate vehicles directly, but there are lots of people who do in the Atlanta region. And what the ARC is doing is trying to put that whole network together in a way that makes sense for customers. They're also doing some really innovative stuff with mobility management. And I thought their bus stop signage concept of how they're going to, in a unified design, have a single bus stop with multiple carriers was really neat stuff. So that's in that article. And then our second visit was from just a couple blocks away. Rich, you can talk about the Atlanta streetcar.
Yeah, the Atlanta streetcar will be coming online later this fall, or certainly by the end of this year. And it's really kind of a new direction for the city of Atlanta, although there's been some regional investments that have kind of had some trouble with voters. Atlanta itself is prioritizing streetcar development, not only on this initial route, but hopefully a larger system that will eventually encircle the city. The interesting thing about the streetcar is how it kind of challenges and tries to, move past some, communities right in the old Fourth Ward area of Atlanta that have been neglected and kind of really gotten cut in two by the installation of I-75 and 85 right through this historic district. So streetcar service will try to link that area with downtown and the regional MARTA system.
Yeah, we like to always use that phrase, connecting communities, but it really seemed like the streetcar was really trying to do that in a very physical way.
And a very neighborhood-oriented fashion. And we had lunch right at this market, the Sweet Auburn Market, right along the streetcar route. And it's kind of not a type of area that a lot of people associate with Atlanta, but is very much present and doesn't get covered very much in the national conversation.
Well, our next stop was to drive a couple miles north from downtown Atlanta to midtown Atlanta, and on the 33rd floor of one of the high-rises and the office towers there is kind of one of a recognizable name, certainly to anybody who reads this publication, Route Match Software. And Daisy Wall was kind enough to give us kind of a quick tour of their floor on that building, and you'll see in the piece, it was kind of really interesting to see how they view the transit industry and their role in it. This visit and many other visits, when you're visiting transit systems, there's often a lot of discussion about how they do routing and scheduling and what kind of software they use and technology they use, and you get a sense of kind of how they use that technology as a tool. But this was the other perspective of how the actual creator of that software works, and it was interesting to see the different departments and the different looks and feels, and it gives you kind of a different sense, I think, if you read the piece on what Route Match is about and how they're going about updating and moving their product forward.
Yeah, and a lot of how they interact with customers at different stages of deploying the product, and the different systems they work with across Georgia too.
I think that was the first day of the tour, and we drove due east from Atlanta, kind of east and maybe a little bit north, and our next stop was Athens. So, Rich, tell us about Athens.
Yeah, most people know Athens is the home of the University of Georgia, a huge Southeast university, and interestingly, some data just came out that identifies Athens and the campus community there as being one of the highest per capita users of public transit in the nation. More than 11 million people use transit in a small urban city like Athens on both Athens Transit, which is the local public transit provider, and the University of Georgia's campus transit. And those two organizations work together and provide a lot of service, especially during the college years, both in the college year during the spring and fall semesters. And kind of how that all plays in together, and also serves the larger community, not just students and faculty, but those who live there year-round.
It was very impressive, being in a traditional university setting, but you just saw so much service, and you knew, well, we were there, and it was the third week of July.
Right, yeah, there's still a lot going on, even though the students weren't really.
Yeah, so you can only imagine how busy it must be now. Well, from Athens, we started to head kind of wheeled around back to the west and south of Atlanta, and our first stop in that part of the adventure was at Henry County Transit, and I covered that one. Henry County Transit is the transit provider in Henry County, and you may not be aware, but the state of Georgia has hundreds of small counties. Yeah. It's got tons of those kinds of jurisdictions that they're dealing with. Henry County is one of those that is now part of the Atlanta region, and really the Henry County story revolves around one key fact. 1990, 50,000 population, Henry County. Today, 210,000 population. How the transit system is dealing with that growth and trying to react to that kind of growth is really the crux of that article. And there were, by any measurement of growth, it's really astounding what the county has gone through. And in some ways, I think they use the phrase transit has been an island and somewhat separate from what's been happening around it. And now they've got a new director in there, Ty Salters, and we've, in talking to them, you really feel like they are now going to go out and get off that island and start to make transit part of where Henry County is moving. So that was that piece. And then from there, we finished the second day of the tour in Griffin, Georgia. Nice little town, and we visited with our former state delegate and a former president, I think current president of the Georgia Transit Association, Robert Height, and talked about Three Rivers Regional Commission, which is, it's a regional commission like Atlanta, and Georgia is split up into 12 regional commissions. And it was really an interesting discussion with Robert, because you came to understand how many of these regional commissions have connected together or coordinated rural public services, 5311 funds, with what they call human services transportation, which is largely seniors, people with disabilities, developmental disabilities, these kinds of trips, into a coordinated system. The Three Rivers Regional Commission is a 10-county area. They're doing a lot of trips, a lot of employment-based trips, and they contract out with a private operator for the actual service of the vehicle. So it was one of those few visits in these kind of trips where we didn't see buses operating, but we heard all about what they're doing.
And Three Rivers was the first of these regional commissions to do this coordinated and kind of set the model, and we'll talk a little bit about some other systems that have done that afterwards, too.
And our next stop, we began the Wednesday of the week, day 3 of the tour, was in beautiful Savannah, Georgia. And Savannah, a very historic town, a town that if you've never been there, it's worth your while to pay it a visit. Very unique characteristics. And Savannah's transit system, which is known as the Chatham Area Transit Authority, or CAT, is a system that is going through a lot of transition itself. And I'm not using transition as a way of saying problems or issues. It's really transitioning and building. Savannah is an urban area. It's a little over 200,000. CAT operates, fixed route bus, paratransit. It also does a ferry service. There's a streetcar route in kind of a historic part of the city. They also do a circulator. They're also doing a lot of building. It was fascinating to see a beautiful operations and maintenance facility that's been rehabbed where they operate out of. And then downtown, a transit center that is very well designed. And they've even included Georgia's first bike share as part of what Savannah's doing.
Yeah, and running the transit system, CAT, actually administers the bike share system, which is kind of unique.
Yeah,
and certainly for a city of that size to have bike share, they're ahead of a lot of other places.
And it was also really nice to hear a city, an urban operator like Savannah, talking a lot about mobility management and those kinds of practices and skills. So from there, the Thursday morning, we drove south to Darien, Georgia, and that was with one that Rich wrote up.
The Coastal Regional Commission also covers a pretty large area, 12 counties, actually including Savannah and further north of it as well, all the way down to basically the Florida line.
So from South Carolina to Florida.
And all the way along the coast.
Yeah.
And they also do the coordinated regional, rural, and human services transportation. They have a very solid private company they work with, Transitions. Unique to our visit, usually when we come to visit a transit provider, there's 2 or 3 people that give us a few hours of their time. This meeting had 12 or 13 people already to welcome us, including representatives from the Department of Transportation and the Georgia Department of Health and Human Services. So it was a pretty strong show of how many people are involved in this coordination effort across multiple counties.
It was.
Riders can go from any county to any other county in the service area, which covers a lot of territory. And then from there, we kind of headed to a small urban area that's within that coastal region, Hinesville, Georgia, which is in Liberty County. A couple years ago, when the nearby combination of Fort Stewart and Hinesville became a metropolitan recognized area, they created their own urban transit system right in Hinesville to serve Fort Stewart, which is the largest military installation east of the Mississippi and the community where everyone lives there. So they have some challenges of actually getting onto base, which few transit systems actually do, that drive the buses onto the base, and kind of looking at a 10-year window to expand the service to some neighboring communities and serve Liberty County, beyond just the city of Hinesville there. And they also work together with Coastal Regional Commission to kind of connect that area.
It kind of felt very new, too. Yeah, everything in Hinesville seemed brand new.
The City Hall was brand new, the library, mostly because the massive growth at Fort Stewart. It's gone from pretty much an outpost to a standing military presence with the 3rd Regiment there. So
Darien and Hinesville were day 4 of the tour. And the last day, Friday, or day 5, we spent down in Valdosta. And that was interesting because it wasn't with a regional commission that does all the machinations of making transit happen, but we decided to visit a private operator who does some of the contract work to see kind of this whole setup from their perspective.
Right, yeah, we visited with MIDS Incorporated, which started off as a literal mom-and-pop medical transportation service doing non-emergency stretcher transport. And eventually they acquired the contracts to provide this coordinated service over the years. And they also serve a pretty large region stretching from the coast all the way to the Alabama border. And pretty much south of Macon region all the way to the Florida line. So they cover a lot of turf. They have several different facilities where they coordinate their drivers and maintenance out of. So we saw the business perspective and how they need to focus on having a stable source of revenue and backup income so that when reimbursements take some time to play out, they can withstand those administrative delays that a lot of other providers can't.
And really a small... For what they're doing, it's really a family. You could definitely get that sense. This is a small family-run business.
Exactly. Yeah.
This wasn't some major international corporation. They had that level of understanding and familiarity with their passengers that you see in any rural system, whether it's a private. And also interesting, they did a lot of Medicaid service. They were the only ones we ran into that took the Medicaid contract, so they were adding NEMT to that.
Right. They were doing the whole gamut.
Yeah. So those were the stops we made. You'll see some other stories. We cover Macon and Rome and Albany, Georgia, with some other pieces. And we really try to give, as we always do with one of these state editions, and I think we succeeded in a good flavor of what transit is like across the state of Georgia. We couldn't cover everybody as much as we'd like to. We only had a week. But as always, this is really, for the magazine staff, kind of a highlight every year because you get to go see these things and ride on these things and get a real sense of what these systems mean in the community that you just can't get on the phone with somebody.
Yeah, when you write it from the desk, it's not the same perspective. So we're glad to it hit up Georgia this time.
Yeah, and I hope that comes through in all the articles. And in closing, please enjoy the Georgia edition of Community Transportation. As always, you can reach me at Bogren, Bogren at ctaa.org, and you can reach Rich
at SAMPSON at CTA.org, and follow us on Twitter. Scott runs the CT Mag 1 account, and I run Rail Mag accounts on Twitter, so follow us there.
Yeah, let us know what you think of the edition. Give us suggestions on another state you'd like to see us cover. We've done 16 or 17 of these over the years, and we are going to be already looking to plan next year, so please enjoy this edition of the magazine. Thank you.